Hi, I'm Somu from It Starts the Dream, and today's episode is looking at crises, life crises, and challenges, and then how you can actually use them to become a stepping stone to something better, something more aligned, a better fit for you, and use it as a compass to guide you in life. So I'll start with the first one. It was secondary school, final year of school, and I'd found myself being a bit isolated. I've been pulling back from my friendship group that I'd had all throughout because I came from a religious family, so drinking and smoking at that age were not things that I actually wanted to do either, and I knew my parents wouldn't really be happy about that. And my friends had started hanging out with a new group, the cool girls, and that's what they were doing in the playground. I mean in the park. So when I'd be hanging out with my friends, and we're all with as a big group with the other girls, I felt really uncomfortable. I didn't really, I didn't really want to be there doing those things. So I just found myself, not meeting up and just making excuses if I could, I wouldn't come out. But I was actually working at the weekends as well. So it meant that most of the times they were going out, I was actually working. So that really affected my friendship group. And I found myself feeling a bit more isolated. And then some other friends I'd had from primary school who weren't in my class, again, the things had shifted and I just found it hard to sort of like be part of that group as well, even though I did still want to be. And then I had another thing where a friend who was a boy, he just started calling me like very horrible names. You can imagine the types of names. And that really hurt me and it really knocked my confidence and affected me. And I started having like irritable bowel syndrome types of symptoms, like upset tummy, those types of things. I was also quite worried about my exams, and I think I knew I had not been working and studying as much as I needed to be. I was, I guess, feeling quite distracted and struggling to focus. So I'd been predicted quite good results, and I just felt like I wasn't going to get them, and I didn't get them. I got them in a couple of subjects, and then others, like I still did well, but I just didn't do as well as I'd hoped and as well as predicted to do. So all of those sort of things were going on in my mind. I was quite shy and reserved at school, to be honest. Like I have been since I can remember. And that's been something that I have had to purposely work on and work through. And this last 8 years of doing this self-development journey, I've learned so much and sort of uncovered what caused that. And there was, trauma, moving from another country, racism, things like that made me feel like I wasn't, as good as other people. There was something wrong with me. I had to hide away. I had to just try to stay in the background and things like that. So I had those sort of feelings. So I was quite reserved, quiet. I would only really be my full self with those few friends I had. So I've always been the type of person who would have less friends, but very close. So when that friendship group sort of started to change, that was very hard. So when I finished school, I was just ready for a new start. I lived in a small village, and it was mostly white English people. When we moved, it was like people would look at us like, oh, like my mum was the first black person that lived there. We were the first what I call true real mixed race people. There was another family that seemed, I think they were Turkish, and they had sort of olive tan skin, but their hair texture was I call Caucasian hair. But then we came and it was just people looking at us like, oh, who are these? So that's the type of place I lived in. And then I just felt like I was ready for new things. I wanted to do fashion. So college was the best place for me rather than staying at sixth form. College was in the city. I was living in a village, and college was in the town, which is now a city, but it was a town at that point. And I was so ready for this fresh start. In that summer, I went to Zambia, which is where my mother's from, where I was born. And it just did something to me. It's like I saw the other part of me, and it just all made sense. And it was just like, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with how you look. There's nothing wrong with your hair. There's nothing wrong with your color of skin and your name and all of these things. And I just felt so much better about myself. And I just decided when I went to my new college, I was going to reinvent myself. That's why I'm laughing now, because it was so funny. I was like, I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm going to be confident, talkative, funny. I'm going to just be the person I am on the inside, I'm going to be like that just from day one. And I decided to change my name as part of that. So I was using my middle name. My parents have always called me my middle name. And I decided to go to college and use my first name, which is a Welsh name. So in I walked, and then I was like looking around, okay, who do I want to be friends with? And then there was a black girl there. And like, I'd never, like I said, gone to a school with a black girl or a mixed race girl in my class or year. So I was just like, oh, it'd be nice to like know some more brown people, black people, especially after having spent the summer in Zambia. So I was like, okay, I'm going to talk to her. And I just walked up to her, introduced myself and all of this. And then there were some other girls that seemed very nice, friendly, and, we got talking. And it was a lovely group, actually, because it wasn't like little cliques where people just be in their own groups. While you did have sort of smaller groups where it was like these 2 or 3 would, maybe hang out together like out of college, it was like everyone got on and everyone was friends. It was such a lovely environment. I just felt like a different person, and I was confident. I was kind of loud. I was the class clown. People just, yeah. And then when I saw someone who knew me from the other school, who'd also come to college, he said to me, oh, you're like a different person. And I was like, no, I was always this person, but you just didn't know it. And I think that's really the key of it. It's not really in reinvention. It's really about what's on the inside, coming out and expressing that. And I think when we're in a life crisis, there are parts of us that we have been maybe hidden away, buried away. And I think our brain, our body is like trying to wake us up and go, hey, you're not bringing all yourself to life. Wake up, bring it out. So there's that feeling of like something's off, like things aren't quite right. So it was such a funny experience. And yes, it was all the things I determined that I would be. And then went on to university, and that kind of changed because that was much bigger. And I don't know, whatever reason, but I went back to being a bit more on the quiet side there. And then I think work life started, and I really went back to how I was, where I was very quiet and reserved. I think I found it very nerve-wracking, and it's like, will I do a good job? What will I say to like a boss or a director or someone who's in charge? Because I realized I had this very high level of respect for authority, and I would say it wasn't even necessarily respect. I'd say it was fear of authority. So that was interesting, starting to work and then being really, really scared to talk in a meeting, to like going to knock on the door of the director or the owner and be like, oh, we've got some work to show you. Oh, it was terrifying. So those are some things I probably learned. But at that point in my life, I didn't really have like self-awareness or know about self-development. So I didn't actually ever think like, let me work on this, let me change this. So I just went through a lot of my work life like that, sort of hiding away, not really bringing my full self and my thoughts and opinions to what I did. So the next crisis I'll talk about, and I would go forward, I had been working, I had my second child, I was having postnatal depression. My the baby, this newborn baby, he refluxing, and he would wake up every 2-3 hours. This was well past 6 months old. The sleep deprivation was driving me crazy. Me without sleep is not good. And him being so unsettled, in the day he'd cry because he was just so unhappy. Bless him. He was just in pain. You couldn't leave him down. You couldn't leave him in the cot. You had to carry him all the time. And then I was having so much back pain and pelvis pain, and I didn't know where it came from, what caused it. And that had started after the birth of my second child. So I had undiagnosed pain. I was worried about being made redundant while I was on maternity leave, because all these like whispers, like colleagues saying, oh, this lady's come in and she's working, she seems to think she's permanent, and it's like she's got your role. And so I'm just hearing all these things, and I get really worried and thinking, oh, how am I going to broach this? Because it's kind of illegal to make me made redundant. If someone's coming to cover you, they can't then have your role. So there's me thinking I have to have a conversation with my boss, and I'm scared of confrontation. So I was just very worried about all of that. And then my dad was diagnosed with cancer just a week or a couple of weeks after my son was born. So it was just a lot going on. And my grandma had passed away as well just before that. So just a lot going on, really. It took me a really long time to actually get professional help, and I wish I'd gotten it sooner. And I was visiting the health visitor for the children, But she was like a great support, and I just telling her how I was feeling as well, and just talking to her each couple of weeks was really helpful. And they're there to support the babies, but they're also there to support parents, and I don't think everyone really knows that. And she sort of gave me suggestions, and she was like finding about services that could help me. But I think at that point, I realized I really had to sort of get more help than that. And that's when I went and had CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And that really helped me have these tools to cope with like what I'd call a tough situation, a bad situation. But then it only took me so far, because I realized that a lot of the stuff that was upsetting me, worrying me, there was some of it was situational, like a big baby that doesn't sleep. And I was thinking, okay, one day they'll feel better and they will sleep, and this work thing would resolve itself. I think actually I'd gone back to work at this point, and I'd had that hard conversation, and basically he couldn't make me redundant, and it was all a bit awkward. It was actually quite unpleasant working there after I'd had that conversation. So I had that work thing still sort of rumbling around, like, okay, this is awkward. I don't feel good here. I would like to go somewhere else. But then that job was part-time. So I was in this dilemma of, okay, if I move, it's going to have to be full-time, and I don't want to do that at that point. And then that's around the same time that I was going to the CBT therapy. So part of it was this frustration of, I think I actually really need to change things in my life. And there was just that fear of, how do I change things? Where do I start? I don't know what I'm doing. And the therapist kind of couldn't really help me with that. And I got frustrated, but I realized it's not her job. So that was, she's trying to give me these tools to cope with the bad situation. And then I'm actually like, I think I need to have something forward. I need to have some kind of goals, a new idea of what my life could be like. Because at that point, I'd been following the plan I set for myself when I was like 18, 19. And here I am. I'm now a mum, and I'm not feeling as passionate about work. I really want to be with my young children more. I don't really want to work full time, but then I feel like, what option do I have? Because I've got bills to pay, and my career wasn't flexible. It's not a flexible industry. So during that time, I did get an opportunity to do maternity cover at what was my dream job on paper, to work for an established UK retailer. Well, I think it was like over 100 years old. And going over there, I felt so good to leave that old job because of how awkward it had been, and how it just been really awkward after I had had the conversation and things weren't going well there. He was like, well, is it better if I make both of you redundant, because then it's not technically like illegal? And it was just like, what am I supposed to say to that? And so funnily enough, the other lady who's up for redundancy, I got her a job at this place too. So we both went over, and it seemed like a fresh start. On the work front, it was really lovely to like have all these resources. It's like a big company, so you had like trend books, you had people come in and talk to you about trends, and we had loads of magazines. It was like being spoiled, because I come from a very small company where you'd have to almost buy stuff out of your own money. So it was really exciting to be in a bigger place and to see the inner workings of a retailer, being in meetings with directors and all those sorts of things. But it was full time, and every day I just felt it. My heart was like, I want to be with my kids. And there's a few things that happened where one son needed to have like a treatment, and I couldn't be there because it was like, there's a deadline. And then he started school, and I actually booked time off, and I missed the deadline by one day. Well, I didn't quite miss it, but it was like I was going to miss it. And I seemed to happen to have a really important meeting around that time. And I had requested flexible working. Well, basically one Friday off every fortnight. I walked into that meeting, and it was like I was assaulted. I was not prepared for it. I had not had any negative feedback while I was there. I'd not had any types of negative reviews. And it was like, you missed this deadline, this and this. There was just a lot. It was just like, you're not good, you're bad, slow. It was a very painful meeting. And that day I sat there and I worked, and I finished that project. So it all went out on time because it had to go out that day. And I just thought, is this what it means to pick your children in this career, that you pick your children and then you have things don't go well? And I looked around me and I saw the women who were directors and that sort of thing, that they were mostly at work, and they had husbands that were more doing the child childcare or living like near the house and looking after kids or picking them up. And I just thought, like, I don't think that's how I want to be. And if that's what it means to succeed in this career, I don't think I can succeed. And I'm not sure this is the right place for me anymore. So that crisis highlighted to me that my values were really, really to be around my kids more, not necessarily full time, but definitely a couple of days a week to be at home, not to have to work long hours, and not to feel like I have to pick my work over my children, like missing that first day of school. I picked to be there, but I think some other mums in that situation might have actually just completed the project and not missed the deadline and missed their child's first day of school. So that one was a heartbreaking time. And the contract ended, and I was really quite relieved. I was really quite relieved. It was really worrying about money, but I was relieved. And there was a new lady that had come in just at the end. I remember her saying something to like, "I think this could be good for you because I can see that your heart, that you're a little bit torn, and maybe this could be good for you." I didn't really appreciate it at that time. It's like, well, you could have extended my contract to, like there was still actually probably an opportunity for it to be extended a few more months. But anyway, I just thought, let's forget this whole thing and start something new. And I decided that I would be at home until I could find a part-time job. And that really, for me, was the first time I put almost like a stake in the ground about this is my value and I will not shake from it. It took me 2 years to find that part-time job in my career, way longer than I thought, but that time was not wasted. I had 2 wonderful years, hard years because, it's hard to be home with the kids, and I still had like the aches and pains, which were now diagnosed as a certain type of arthritis. So it was still hard, and I was really still at the beginning of my journey with, like mental health and looking at my thoughts and stuff like that. So I still had a lot of low moods or anxiety and things like that, but it was way better than it had been. Around this time, I realised I had to make that new dream for myself. I had to make a new vision for my life that fit my new values. And this is why I call my business It Starts With a Dream, because from that point, I feel like it was like a new start in my life. And then I started to work out what's important, and it was like being main caregiver for my children until they started school. And it was doing things like contribution, community. I really, like to build community in person at that point. I did it through my church, having small groups in my house. Started a mum and tots group, which was amazing, really helped me because it was like having some friends around, because everyone's at work and you don't realise that, you especially if you don't live where you work and you're at home and everyone's at work, and it's very isolating. So that was a lifeline to me. And basically I just started to try and create what I needed, or what would have helped me, and I tried to create that for others. I started a business. I made a product business where I had lunch towels and travel towels and lunch bags and travel towels. And that was, I guess, then you could say the next life challenge or crisis we'll look at. So I had started selling, and I was selling them on Amazon, selling them in the UK, Europe, America. And it was really exciting. And I basically showed myself like I could do so much more than I thought. It really grew my confidence. I learned so much in that time. I learned like social media, I learned about marketing and niche and, writing things and making websites, taking product pictures, Photoshop. I did that, everything. I did everything myself. I made the logo, I designed the products, I made the tech packs, I designed them in the Far East, I imported them. So I learned all those things, and I was blown away by how much I could do. And I never thought I could do anything like that. Just 2 short years before, I was like, I think one of the things was I felt like I had no options and no choices in life, and I felt like a victim. Because I think deep down I thought it'd be lovely to stay at home or work from home because I need to make an income. But nowhere in my mind at that point did I think I could actually do a business or freelance or anything like that. My confidence was just very low in that aspect. And that way I'd grown just blew me away. And I really just wanted to share that with other women. So around that time, like I said, my products there was more products coming in that were similar, and the competition was getting up. And I had to keep putting more and more money towards adverts, and that made it really expensive. And I didn't have an income at this point, because remember, I was at home, I think. So I had put some of this on a credit card, and I had the value of not getting into debt. And now we were getting into debt, and that was really hard for me. And it was a hard choice, because we had also actually chosen that I was going to stay at home at that point, even though we couldn't afford it. So we did knowingly get into debt. But I didn't really want to get into more debt because of the business. Sort of like made my peace with like getting into debt just to live and be at home for this precious time. But I just did not feel great about it with the business. And I realized I had to really turn it into a brand. It couldn't just be me selling products on Amazon. It has to become a brand. And I wasn't that passionate about the niche, because I realized it was like outdoor camping. And I thought, well, I can't sit here and write articles about camping, blog posts about camping. I hate camping. Let's be real. I don't love camping. I don't like being cold. It hurts my back, hurts my pelvis. It's just not a good combination. So I sat and I thought, what do I care about? What matters? What is the key thing? And I realized I'm so passionate about the growth that I had experienced, and I wanted other women to be able to grow like that. And I wanted to be, basically, I didn't want a business that I wasn't like passionate about, that didn't feel meaningful to me. And I wanted something where it felt like it really mattered. And I don't just want to make money. I wanted to make a difference. So that was the lesson I learned there. And then I thought, I also didn't want to have a lot of debt. So I thought, what can I do that doesn't cost a lot of money, that's really about sharing this passion I have of like self-growth and goals and mindset. And it was basically, it starts with the dream. And at that point, I just started to blog. I started posting on Instagram. I made some free printables. And then I started to create printables to sell. And it was all going in sort of the right direction, growing up bit by bit. It all took so much longer than I thought. And I think people don't always explain that or tell you that. I honestly, it was years. It was years of just, getting a sale here, getting a sale there, building up over time, bit by bit. And I think consistency is something that is underplayed. I think there's very often not a magical button, short of like having loads of money to put into Facebook ads or having some kind of famous connections who can wear your items. There is no shortcut. It is showing up. It is being consistent. It is making things, sharing things, putting your products out there, making content, connecting with other people, potential clients, a network, other people can collaborate with. So it's a journey. But I started that and it was all going in the right direction. And then I had some amazing things where I got featured by Etsy. And I started to think like, maybe this is actually going to replace my income, at least first of all, my part-time income, and then maybe more. I think at this point I'd started working again. I found that part-time job, that rare part-time job in fashion. One day at home, one day in the office. It was perfect. And I loved that balance. I loved it. The kids were now at school, I think, or the little one would be home. He was at nursery a couple of hours. So it was like a lovely one of just time with me and him, and time for my business. I remember I started to go to the gym at this point, time to do my creative work in fashion. And it was a really lovely balance. There's that steady income coming in from that. I could invest in courses. And I really loved that time. And then I was made redundant. Fashion, there's often redundancy. So then, it always feels like a lot of things always seem to happen around the same time. I was made redundant, but around that time I'd gotten a lot. I started to get features and things like that, and my sales were really increasing. I think it was coming up to Christmas, and I did an amazing amount of. For me, it was like amazing. It was like $3,000-$4,000 or pounds worth of sales, and I was like, if this carries on, this is that's fine. I don't need to look for a job. This can replace at least the part-time income, and then Etsy turned my shop off the search, because when you have a lot of sales really quickly, it has an automatic system to protect, supposed to help the seller, because if it's handmade, they won't be overwhelmed with having to make like 2,000 cushions when they used to make one a month or something. And I emailed them and I tried to explain, I'm not printing these myself. I'm working with a printer, but I just got a blanket reply. And I was devastated. My shop eventually came back on, and unfortunately, it just didn't recover. And then just a few months later, or around the same time, Pinterest again had a bug. It marked me as spam by mistake, and I was almost up to like 1 million monthly views, and they plummeted. And even once they said they fixed it, it just never recovered. So there I was. Traffic had crashed on Etsy, crashed on Pinterest. That's traffic to my website. That's traffic to Pinterest. Sales plummeted. I was devastated. I was really upset. I thought, this is it. I'm there. Like, it's going to be okay. I'm going to do this. This is now covering my what I earned part-time. So that was one that took me a while to get over. Even sometimes now, if I think about it, I still get quite upset. But then around that time, we were about to move. So we moved, and then it was still pandemic. My dad was poorly, and then he did pass. So around that time, I just didn't have the energy to rebuild Pinterest, to rebuild Etsy, and, make new listings and work on my keywords and put some new images and all those things they say to do. I just didn't have the energy for it. My mind wasn't there. And I had some freelancing in the background, and I realized, like, this is great to have this freelancing, especially in pandemic, because I realized it was great that I had work that I could do any time of the day on my own schedule, and it didn't matter where I was. So I could do that in the evening after homeschooling. And I just thought, this is what I want, more of this type of work. So I had would get a couple of clients for sort of social media, making pins, some graphics and things like that. So like a creative VA, and that was great. But because I didn't have so much energy, I didn't really fully market it. And it was more like my circle, like people in the network were like, oh, I'm looking for someone, or, could you help me out? Because I would say, oh, I'm doing a bit of that. So if you want to book 10 hours or project, but, book me in. But it kind of like enough just to kind of get me going. But yeah, realizing that I want flexible work. And then that grief process when my dad did pass, even less energy for anything. And then I had new health issues. So maybe made me just think, if I had to go into an office right now, I wouldn't be able to cope. I would not have been able to work in an office, like traveling to work and being in some kind of workplace where you can't just do what you need to do. And I was just so thankful, like, even though I didn't have like in a lot of project work, like at least I had something. And it just made me realize I really want to keep having work that's flexible, that's remote, where I set the hours, I can take a break, I can lie down, I can do whatever I need to do, can still take care of my mental health, take care of my physical health with having a slow pace of life for my back and my pelvis. And then I also started to think about, okay, I haven't really got anything to lose here, because the principles, the Etsy shop is sort of bust unless I really rebuild it. And I just thought, you know what, it's a fresh start. I could rebuild it, but do I want to rebuild it? And I think the fact that I hadn't really put the effort in all that time, I thought, no, there's something I'm learning here. There's a new opportunity. Again, this crisis is teaching me something. And I thought, what is it? And I realized actually I want to go deeper with my clients. I didn't want to just have something they're doing on their own. They're sitting there working through the principle, using a planner on their own. I really wanted to work closely with my clients. So I knew that I had to start making courses. So I made courses, and some of the courses I do is like Facebook Lives. I made like a mini membership for about 9 months, and we'd have monthly calls, doing our goals together. And I loved that. I really enjoyed that. And that was just before my dad passed. And then I just had that feeling like, oh, I want to stop the membership. And then he went into hospital, and then he passed. So I don't know how these things work, but then at that time I just had that chance to grieve without a lot of things going on, and I really needed it. So coming out of that, which is really the last few months, it's been a hard year, but it's really been a year of growth. I think this is the thing, in all these times I've had hard times, there's still been beauty, there's still been opportunity, there's still been growth, there's still been what I call dreams, and I still feel like I've lived a dream life. even in these challenges, even in grief, even in like a pandemic, there's still opportunities to experience a version of our dream life, no matter what's going on. And it's how we're thinking about things and how, our mindset and how we approach it, how we build our day. Like, even in a challenge, I'm going to do something fun for myself. I'm going to do something that's going to fuel me. I'm going to learn something. I'm going to read a book for fun. I'm going to just put some time into my setting out my plates at lunch, a beautiful plate, a beautiful cup, and, sit in the garden and eat. And those things to me is what creates a dream life. And I think we can have this big, these ideas of like jet setting and designer handbags and personal chefs. And I think most of us actually, we just want to feel like each day there's something that we do that's enjoyable. We want to feel like we're sharing our gifts. We want to, use our talents and share that with others. We want to make a difference. We want to be a positive light in the world. I think a lot of us, those are the things actually that we want that actually matter. And I do believe we can have all those even in hard times and crises. So going through this year, really focused on inner healing, really kind of went inwards and just sort of like uncovering the next layer. It's like, what's going on? Okay, here's some patterns that I noticed. I'm still living out these patterns. Like, really, what's going on underneath? Where did it come from? And, that's been more faith-based for me, but you can still do that in a non-faith-based way, like with counseling or therapy, journaling. Journaling is amazing for that. There's loads of amazing workbooks that you could get on different types of topics. So I was working through like a faith-based workbook, which was called Keys to Freedom. And it's like looking at, you could say, like generational things in the past and patterns that come through your family and things that you learn and hard experiences you have, which cause you to sort of protect yourself by acting in a certain way. So like for me, racism made me feel like there's something wrong. It's bad to be me, bad to have this big hair. I used to hide my hair in a little bun and just try to be the same. I didn't wear anything that would make me stand out. I wanted to hide in plain sight. So it's very hard to hide in plain sight when you are a different colour, you've got different hair, and you've got a funny name, as people would say. Oh, that's an unusual name. Oh, when people are kids, they actually just laugh at the name. And there was a million different versions and nicknames that I had, which I did not like. But so this year has been like going into some of that and actually healing on it and processing it, forgiving people, forgiving situations. I have come out feeling like a different person this year. And then I've been like, okay, what's next? What am I learning through this? Okay, I want to help other women even more deeply. I don't just want to do a course and, they work through something. And I actually want to help women who go through all kinds of situations that I personally haven't experienced. So I felt like I need to get some of these extra tools. And for me, it seemed that the best of it was to do life coaching training. So I started to do that. I've started to do a ICF diploma in life coaching. And I have just felt a bit like how I felt when I first started my first business, when I first started the blog, and that excitement again, that passion, just like wanted to wake up, learning, growth. So I've realized like, if I do something, the same type of thing for quite a while, and if there's no growth in it, it's like I'm not learning something new, I'm not sort of developing, I do then start to feel like that unsettled feeling. So I'm realizing that for me, growth is actually a huge value, one I probably didn't realize. But when I look at my work career, I can see how I wasn't really growing and I wasn't really happy. It was like, it was like a bit meh. And having something to work towards, like I always feel like more motivated, excited in life. And if I'm motivated in one area, I notice it comes across all these different areas. And I think that's the thing. We're like a whole being. We're all interconnected. And if something's affecting us in one area, it shows up in another. So I think the key thing is whatever you're going through, I do think, number one, you can feel better. And you can use it to look at it and uncover, what are my values? What is it I'm not doing that deep down I want to be doing? Like, be honest with yourself. I think we all know deep down what we want to do, but our logical mind tells us that we can't afford it, it's too hard, what will people think? Our logical mind is like giving us all these reasons we can't. And if we are just honest and we just like, what do I want? And you just speak it out, we just write it out, I think deep down we all know what we want to do next. So I hope whatever you're going through, you can use it to see what you want to do and start making steps towards that, because you're going to feel happier, you're going to feel more fulfilled, excited, motivated for life again. I hope today's episode has helped you. It's a bit of a long one, but I think sometimes hearing those personal experiences, the stories, so you can actually see like how did that relate to that? How did she get there from having that experience? And I hope that helps you. Like, subscribe, leave a comment wherever you're watching this. I'd love to know your feedback. Thank you.